Well, he's been lovely having you with us, sir. A progressive and a proven leadership, ladies and gentlemen, brings a global cross-industry perspective, and that's the idea here that we want to bring forward to the GCC landscape. Therefore, we have our leaders who will stepping up to the stage to join this panel, and they are Srinivas Rao, Mahankali, ex-CEO, 𝗬𝗺𝗺, serial entrepreneur, joins us on stage, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome Mr. Srinivas Rao onto the stage. Mr. Srinivas Rao, Mahankali with us. Lovely having you with us, sir. We also have with us Sanjaya Rao. Mr. Sanjaya Rao with us, Managing Director, EveryOps. May we have you with us, please? Ms. Sharanya Kandasamy, Lead GenAI Projects, Fidelity, National Financial India. Wherever you see your picture, you're requested to sit in front of your pictures. I would also like to invite on stage Mr. Rohit, Aradhya, Managing Director, India, Barracuda. May we have all of you with us on stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to this panel. This is indeed the lounge special. We have our moderator with us. I now hand over this panel to Joy Abraham. Mr. Joy, this stage is all yours. But I feel the applause wasn't enough. Can we give ourselves a round of applause, please? And as stated before, I would like to keep you all informed. Awards is coming up soon, so do not go out of this room. Stay with us. Please take your seats. Over to you, Mr. Joy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. One more time, maybe. Okay. Good afternoon. So before I bring in my amazing panel into the discussion, I wanted to take a minute or two to set the context about this discussion which we are going to have. So a decade ago, if you know the GIC, if I can say that, GIC and GCC story looked very, very different, right? The leadership influence was basically measured on how big you are in terms of the head count, right? And the focus was very clear. You drive the cost arbitrage and you grow as much you can. And we have also seen that as long the centers kept growing, most of the leaders especially, they felt that most of the senior positions were secured. And I remember, because this is something which we have seen most of the time as the leaders also. On the same note, I would like to start with a personal anecdote. And I think this is something which you too may have experienced, even the audience do, from your friends, family, and colleagues. So a few days ago, I was helping my daughter with her homework. And, of course, out of nowhere, she asked me that the homework can be done by the AI, the essay can be written by them, and I think everything can be done with the AI. Now, the interesting question, when I grow up, what kind of jobs would be left for me? Now imagine if, and by the way, she is in standard 6, she's 12-year-old. So if the 12-year-old can have that mindset, imagine what would be going in the minds of the young engineers and the graduates who enter the workforce, right? So I think on the same line, what I wanted to understand, especially from the panel, is they know, in fact, the next generation already knows what the next is coming, right? But why some of the GCC leaders are still playing with the old playbook, if I can use that. So to bring that in, and I think I would like to now start with MSR. So I think my question is, I have my notes here. And by the way, it's not that I'm putting you on spot, but the first question is the doer and builder paradox. And the reason I'm putting you here is because as a serial entrepreneur and former CEO 𝗬𝗺𝗺 and an advisor, you are surrounded by most of the builders, right, world all the time. So my question is, how do you move forward from rewarding the SOP-driven doers and enabling the builders without hurting the operational challenges? So over to you, MSR.
Thank you, Joy, and pleasure being here. So I put it this way, right? I'll start with a reference to the Pareto principle. Okay? So, we all know the Pareto principle, right? 80-20, right? So in this context, I think as GCs evolve, they'll have to find this mix of, how much is build versus how much is do, right? And I think a good starting point is starting with something like 10 to 20% build and 80% do, as opposed to 90 to 100% do, right? And I think several, I know many people in the audience, many of them have already been able to successfully, kind of make the transition. Now, I think one important thing as part of this is to think about, when you're talking about doing versus building, I think there are a few things which are fairly fundamental, right? So one is about the funding, then how do you measure outcomes, what metrics you use, and how do you, put a governance structure to what you measure, right? So if you try and peel the onion a little bit, right? So for example, if you start with, let's say, metrics, right? So obviously, when you're talking about building, in building, you're talking about what new things you bring to the market, what you might call experimental velocity and factors like that. How many new features get shipped, and things like that, as opposed to traditional measures of, tickets, SLAs, and so on. So that's one part. Then a few more things to think about. So for example, can you create like a explicit product charter, right? So for example, what markets, what outcomes, what products are you building as against, volume, quality, and cost, which is what you traditionally measure in build, right? And one or two other points before we get into the people part, because I think that's the big part. How do you create a culture which, focuses on doing as opposed to, building? I think the other thing is how do you create some kind of safe sandboxes for you to try without bringing the house down, right? I think it's something you need to think about. Now, coming to the people part, I think you need to think about talent in a very different way. So you need to hire people who come from a build standpoint. So let's say a product manager, for example, or a UI UX or an architect, etc. And also create opportunities for people who've been doers to, to rotate and come into, this team of builders. And then, of course, there's plenty of opportunities for organizations to collaborate with startups, to collaborate with academia, etc. And most importantly, I think, is also, how do you create visibility for people who are going to be part of the build to ensure that they know that what they're doing is going to impact the company overall, and also for leaders out there, saying that this 10, 15, 20% you're doing, right, is essentially actually de-risking, because you're helping the company from, from a go-to-market, from creating new revenue models, increasing margins, and so on. I can go on, but,
No, absolutely. I think that's a valid point. Now, especially you spoke about the startup culture, right? So I have one follow-up question on that. Now, there are a lot of startups which are coming. We also read a lot of reports, especially from India, how many startups have shut down. Now, especially in this AI, since the theme is AI, how do you think the 2026 is going to be, especially for the startup culture, in your opinion?
no, I think, startup shutting down is a very different theme, because many of them, I think the fundamental thing when you're building a startup is, I think I always talk about two things, right? A lot of people say they shut down because they ran out of money, but the cause is not that, it's upstream. So they haven't found product market fit. And in some cases, founder market fit is an issue. So if they fix those two, then you will succeed, right?
Great.
So, and specifically in AI, I think there are, like just this morning, I received a 237-page book from someone who attended the AI summit on the, particularly in vertical AI. I think there are plenty of startups doing, very interesting work.
Did they visit the famous university stall?
No, not that.
All right, thank you very much for that. So for the second question, this is around the agentic AI, and I think we had a lot of sessions on the agentic AI, and I want to route that to you, Sanjaya, is you are at the forefront of, building, especially the agentic AI platforms. So how do you think the agentic AI starts, what if they start managing the workflow and process intelligence? What happens to that middle management layer, which is supposedly the backbone of GCCs? Do we need to be worried?
Very valid question, first of all. Very relevant considering you're following the AI summit in Delhi. what Mr. Khosla mentioned, right? He's saying 2030, all the jobs will be wiped out. But you also have a nationalist in Mr. 𝗦𝘂𝗺𝗺 trying to highlight it's not the story, right? The truth somewhere is in between, right? Now, I just want to check with the audience and see. I'm guessing most of them are at least middle management and upper management in here, right? You guys are seeing the impact in different ways. The first one could be, I was talking to one of my colleagues outside, and he was saying, have you followed the stocks of TCS 5 years ago to now? They're negative in the last 5 years. Infosys is more or less there. So are we seeing some impact? I'm getting to your question, right? So the impact is not just to the middle management. You want the verdict, right? The impact is across. Right? And is it worrying? Yes. Are there options for that? Definitely yes. Right? And that's what I'll try and cover here. The genesis of the problem is how we have structured our IT over the last 30 years. We had a pyramid way of working because we were structured for economies of scale. Top layer is a proper pyramid. You'll have a program manager, bunch of managers, leads, and bunch of ELTs from colleges who were passed out recently. And that's the model which was very prevalent. Now, as we've gone ahead, post-COVID and with AI coming in, we are seeing a lack of onboarding of freshers. This is one area. And at the top also, it's collapsing. Most companies have an unwritten rule, 35 plus, they do not want to hire them. Right? This is the area that you're focusing on, 35 plus, mid-management. What is the impact? But my view on this is slightly different. Right? And I'm experiencing that firsthand in our organization. For example, all the employees in our organization, the youngest is 35 years old. And the unwritten rule for each one of them who joins our organization has to be hands-on, has to be, should have the ability to learn continually. That is the foremost thing in IT. I think somewhere we have slacked on that. Once that slack is there, we are going to face an impact. We need to get over that. That's the first part. And cover across multi-cloud, be up to date. And we have embraced agentic AI in a big way. Right? Even our coding is vibe coding. Use Claude Code, all the tools that are there. Right? Having said that, there are 3 areas that I want to cover wherein I definitely see opportunities for the management. The first one is your traditional program management, project management, where you're looking at AI-led projects. A lot of organizations are undergoing transformation. So there exist definite opportunities for all the people here who could transcend into that area. But obviously there's some learning. You'll need to understand a little more of AI before getting into the nuances of managing the product. This is the first area. The second one is brownfield engagements. Large organizations, they're not AI ready. And that lies an opportunity. My guess is 2-3 years. These organizations to become completely AI enabled. These are opportunities for Indian AI. And I'm sure we've gone through this multiple times. 2000, 2008, the COVID scenario, and now I'm sure we'll be able to overcome that. The third opportunity, which is still the gold mine, is data being the new oil. Right? So in this scenario, your AI is as good as the kind of quality of data that you can manifest. So if we spend a lot more focus on how do we ensure within the organization, this edition of GCCs Summit is all about that, right? Data and analytics, and how do we ensure we are at the forefront in this area, then I'm sure the opportunities will be there for us to consume. That would be my answer.
Thanks. So on the same note, Sanjay, so what do you think this greenfield versus brownfield, what do you think this, especially next 2 years, would be more critical for? Which part of implementation are you looking at?
Brownfield for sure. There's a lot of money on AI.
Okay.
It needs to percolate into larger organizations which are not still ready, which are not yet ready. So that's an area that we need to focus on and ensure we get there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. You spoke about project and program management, and I think this is where I want to bring in Sharanya. So Sharanya, I think you are also a leading transformation when it comes to Fortune 500, right? And I think especially on the lattice versus the retention paradox. I have my question, if engineers can get a 30% hike, and you're sitting in Bangalore, this is something which is very, very common, and more AI native roles elsewhere, does the lattice career model really matter? And how do we make GCCs the employer of choice when jobs are being rewritten by AI now almost every 6 months? What are your thoughts on that?
First, thanks for the question, and it's very close to my heart as a project manager. That's a problem that I face day in, day out, honestly. See, the talent, the AI talent of today, right, they have a few questions on their mind constantly, right? Is the work that I'm doing relevant to the market? First thing, right? And is this work taking me closer to AI, or is it taking me further away, right? And the last question that is constantly on their mind is, am I learning more here than outside, right? So if the question, for these questions, if the answer is no, then definitely the resource is going to look for an opportunity outside, right? That goes without saying. See, our GCCs are sitting on a gold mine, right? See, we have enterprise scale data. We have big budgets supporting transformation projects, and we have messy, challenging problems to solve with technology. And now we have the technology as well. But in spite of this, and by the way, these are things that many startups and product firms cannot boast of, right, that GCC has. But in spite of this, we still see attrition as a problem, right? I think that's because there's lack of fluidity and mobility in the lattice structure that we currently have, where, say, for example, we have a team, and somebody wants to move from one AI technology into another, right? In the current system, what happens? We need to wait for approvals, we need to wait for probably even performance cycles, we need to figure out equivalent roles, we need to wait for backfills, right? All of that creates a stagnation, right? And that's the period when the resource gets that itch. Oh, maybe let me look outside, let me see what's there, you know? So what is it that we can do to prevent that itch from happening, right? We need to build our lattice system in such a way that it encourages that mobility and fluidity and talent movement within the organization, right? When I say fluidity and mobility, just expanding on that, things like, say, for example, a person should be able to move from one project to another with weeks of transition and not months, right? And projects in itself could be of duration, smaller durations like 6 to 12 months, max to 18 months, right? We see technology changing every 6 months. So what's the point of building something that's going to take 18 months, right? And most important of all, resources should feel that they are part of product creation, right? And they are building on something new instead of just shadow delivery, right? Which was the previous code of delivery for GCCs. It is changing now. That's very encouraging, but there's still a lot of room for improvement on that aspect, right? So what I want to end on this by saying is that the best way for us to retain people is to bring in that fluidity and mobility within the organization. People should feel their skills are relevant. Their skills are compounding with every project that they take in. The minute that happens, we will automatically see reduction in attrition. And just adding to that, attrition is not always a bad thing, you know. And if your GCC is constantly deepening its AI capability, even if there's minor attrition, it is still good because, see, the honest truth is frontier talent is always going to be fluid. You cannot avoid that. But the more we encourage people to upskill on AI, and the more we encourage people to move between domains, move between the AI projects in itself, that is when people are going to feel that their skills are compounding, and that takes away that itch to, you know, start moving out. So probably Lattice is definitely relevant, but not as a career map, but more like a capability accelerator. That's
Good
what
point.
I would say.
So I think on that notion, I want to ask you, especially at FNF, what is that unique what you are doing, you know, which probably some of the other organizations should also take it as a takeaway? Something unique, of course, to retain these people. Something interesting I heard is you said that you invest a lot of people and the training and everything, but anything other than that, something unique? which you want to highlight?
I'll take my own self as an example. I started as a developer, and then I worked predominantly in testing. Part of it was involved with AI. I agree on that, but my majority of the effort was going into testing, software testing, right? So a few years back, when this opportunity opened up, I did upskill myself. See, the effort has to come from the resource. You cannot go and pull somebody new and force them to upskill. But if you have somebody who's upskilling, giving them that opportunity, right? That is the first thing that organizations need to do. Enabling people to step up and try out new things, right? It's okay to fail. You can always pivot and learn. You can correct your mistakes. But getting that opportunity, many organizations don't do that, right? If you are hired for a role, you stay in that role. They don't encourage people moving away from that and getting into something new. So that's something that's highly encouraged in FNF.
Perfect, great. And I think that's what RK also mentioned in his session, right? There could
Yeah.
be multiple Joels, depends on how do you react. It's something which is very, very critical. Thank you, Sharanya, for that. Now, my next question is, Rohit, for you, and this is on the headquarter twin, which most of the GCC leaders would also be able to relate to. It is, now, you're a major player into the cyber security, right? No doubt there. And as a MD VP of engineering, you're actively transforming your GCC into strategic growth engine, with working with the global stakeholders for sure. So there was a survey which was done where 52% of the GCCs now share accountability for global decisions. Now, I want to understand that as we move forward, becoming HQ twins, work together with global accountability, are processes strong enough for global decision making, or we are simply becoming a bigger version of the support center we are trying to move beyond? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Joy. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here. Again, the fact speaks for itself, right? 52% of them are decision makers. That itself is a testimony that it's not a large-scale support center. It is turning out to be somebody who is standing next to the global capabilities and become an HQ too. But I want you to consider a little bit, right? Let's for a moment assume a orchestra, right? And as a GCC, you probably are a piano player, you're a section player. You've been playing your piece nicely. I mean, you've been playing it for years, and you probably know your piece really well. But if you for the virtue of being in that symphony, you know the player who is sitting next to him, and you know player who is better for you. You all also know the symphony as back of your hand. So given a chance, would you compose a music? Absolutely, yes. Because you are qualified, knows every player in the game, and you get an opportunity, you will be more than happy to do that. And stepping up to that and making the decision, GCCs become actually a very natural choice, right? We have one more additional advantage. See, GCCs are not usually a one-trick pony, right? See, usually when you look at it, we have products, we have business processes, we have support, we have a lot of other shared services functions and other stuff. They are operating in parts. You actually sitting on multiple of these jigsaw puzzle pieces, if you visualize it. And if you just step back and look at it, put a broader lens, you are able to see a different pattern. And that pattern gives you a significant advantage. When it comes down to businesses, some of these pieces, what you hold, are actually critical piece of the business, right? So if you ask me whether GCCs are making the decisions, actually GCCs are very, very capable for making those decisions because over a period of time, we have built that expertise. Also, being in India and Bangalore has its advantages because of the fact that you're sitting next to a largest market. You have a largest talent pool, qualified talent pool, an ecosystem where entrepreneurs are already helping you to build your capabilities. Again, in cybersecurity, for us, it's very important that skills matter. So getting those skills is also very important. So it's not a matter of whether your processes are hindering you. It's a matter of whether your mindset. You need to have that mindset to start thinking as a holistic picture, not from the part picture, right? So going back to my orchestra, are we ready to play the music? Absolutely, yes. And I think very, very well qualified to play the music.
Perfect, great. And I think that's where MSR also mentioned about the doer versus the builder. Now, I think my next question is specifically around something which is very, very close to my heart in terms of the geography. And MSR, I want to put you back on spot. he's got a lot of experience, by the way. We spent some good time for the lunch, and I think that's the time I got a few additional questions, which I thought I'll ask you, is specifically choosing a current location to be the cost and labor pool, right? Now it's time that proximity, the AI ecosystem is also getting into the universities and other thing. My question is in the era of tier 2 city and cost play over, does this need to be top-notch talented teams, or we are forced back into the hyper-expensive tech hubs where the lattice career is most competitive?
Joy, one of my favorite authors is a guy called Mark Twain. Okay? And you might wonder what Mark Twain has to do with what we are talking about. So Mark Twain came to India about, I think about 130 years ago, okay? 1890 something. So he made one quote. He said, for everything which is true in India, the opposite is also true. Okay, and now let me try and connect that to this. So when you think about this, right? So obviously operating in a tier 2 has advantages. Okay. Your rents are lower, sometimes the quality of life could be better for your people. But I think if you look at all ecosystems anywhere in the world, usually they start around central hubs. So Silicon Valley, Boston, Israel, small country sort of thing. So the same thing will apply here, right? To start with, top-notch AI talent, of which there's not a lot, will tend to be the ecosystem density will be much higher in large. So there are, let's say, 1,900 GCCs. I think about 800 or 900 in Bangalore, 350, 400 in Hyderabad, and so on, and other cities. To start with, I think the top talent you'll probably find in the bigger cities. So, also important, I think, just picking up on what Sharanya was saying, if you go to let's say, a backwater, right? Mobility becomes an issue. In case you don't really enjoy what you're doing, you'll find it much harder to, switch. So I think that by itself is going to be a strong and compelling reason that high-end talent you will probably to start with will be in the bigger cities. Okay. Over a period of time, percolation will happen to tier 2. And so maybe some of the execution work, right, can move to tier 2, but the thinking, the design, architecture, those kinds of roles, I think you'll probably find for some time yet, it will continue to be in the larger hubs.
Perfect, great. And I think because I'm into the GCC space, we see a lot of big companies like that who are now also moving to those emerging cities, if I may call that, right? So we are seeing the GCCs being set up in Mohali, Coimbatore, Mysore, and Jaipur, right? Indore. So that is something which is very, very true, and I think this is something which has to be watch out for and is here to grow, is what you say, right? Okay, perfect. So my next question is on the zero knowledge governance, right? And this is, I want to give you a little context for that. So traditional governance require human review and of every step. So agile processes require automation trust. So my question is, can a GCC truly be agile? Or if it's a compliance code, is it still manual? How do we build self-auditing processes that allow us to move at the speed of GenAI? That question is for you, Sanjaya. And then, Sharanya, I would also want you to comment on that once he's done.
See, insofar as the systems that we have seen, especially when it comes to compliance, audit, there's always a human in the loop, right? It's not 100% AI still. I don't know if that will reach there. That's a different paradigm altogether. But when it comes to GCCs, I think the GCCs, especially the BFSI ones, or the ones which are looking at regulatory stuff, healthcare, life sciences, they have done a fantastic job of managing the compliance, the audits, the back-end processes. I think that's top-notch. Now, with the advent of AI, what they can definitely do, and I'm sure they're doing already, some of the use cases that I'm aware of, is bring in automation in all these areas. Right? Policy adherence, for example, validation of policies. These are areas that are there. But at the end of the day, from a governance standpoint, the human in the loop is the most important factor, which all CISOs, for example, are implying, and I'm sure Rohit, from his background, will acknowledge that as well, is the human in the loop is not going to go away, at least in the near future that I can see. And that's my take on that, Sharanya.
I completely agree with you. I mean, especially when it comes to compliance, right? You cannot take away the human. There has to be somebody, doing that final guardrail check. But having said that, it does not mean that there is no scope for automation within this audit and compliance tree, right? Especially in this current GenAI world where majority of the stuff that is built is around data, right? So a lot of things that are checked as part of compliance can be automated and built into your coding workflow. Like, until those conditions are met, the code doesn't move into the next stage, right? So instead of looking at it like an audit that happens after you finish developing a product, you can build guardrails that work hand in hand along with the development, right? For example, just to give a few examples, right? I would say maybe having a PII check in your data, probably bias data check. Many of these things, right, can be built into the system itself as you are building it. So those kind of things definitely need to be automated, because the current way of doing things where we have majority of the steps manual, that's going to become a bottleneck. It already is, but it is going to become a bigger bottleneck in the future when everything else is automated, right? So depending on the scope, depending on the risk appetite of that specific product, we should be able to build in some level of automation in the compliance industry. But like, I agree with him, you cannot take away the human, at least not at this point in time.
Otherwise, there'll be a lot of P1s, as you also mentioned when you came in today. Okay, thank you for that. So, Rohit, this is for you. Now, this is around the workforce reliability and fungibility, basically. So does fungibility kill the expertise? What are your thoughts on that? Because if we make everyone a generalist to ensure agility, do we lose the deep and the capabilities what they carry with them and to make those world-class products?
No, I mean, fungibility doesn't kill the expertise. I mean, if you badly design the org, it might. But the fact is that fungibility gives the experts mobility within the organization. There are some practical examples, like I had in my organization an engineer who was working on bot protection, and he was dealing with a lot of data. But when we were setting up a data analytics team, we decided to move that engineer into that vertical to give that ability, but his expertise remained the same. So the fact is, like, it's kind of visualize it like a team model where you have individual experts built into each of those profiles, each of those individuals. Somebody is a crypto expert, somebody is an auth expert, somebody is this thing. So don't move the people based on what is the problem you are trying to solve. Bring the problem to those individuals. That will help you to do the jobs better. Secondary aspect of things, expertise helps, and expertise helps you to stick to the growth plan as well. So one last point, like I just want to highlight, like AI skills are portable. You can move around AI skills, but domain expertise is not. So you should build both of those things together. Somebody who is a AI skilled guy plus the domain is a formidable skill.
Good point. So I think with that, I want to take concluding thoughts from each one of you. And again, MSR, I would like to start with you. Since morning, we've been hearing a lot of panel discussions, a lot of keynotes. Now, there is a mix of encouragement that, hey, this is good. At the same time, there are a lot of things in terms of the scary times are coming, be ready and things like that. What is, in your opinion, MSR, and I also want you to touch upon what we discussed over the lunch, because you have seen a lot of technology shifts and you understand a little more detail. How do you think we should take this AI as? Should we go with the flow, or should we start getting scared and start building our YouTube careers?
Put it this way, right? Again, as a student of history, so when you go back many hundreds of years ago, first printing press, steam locomotive, the automobile, aeroplane, right? I was telling you at lunch about we were probably the first batch to be allowed to carry calculators to the exam. So that also tells you how old I am. But so all I'm saying is we will cope, right?
Okay.
We will find new jobs. Okay, there will be new ways of doing things. Despite everything that is going on, I think things like some of the things which my colleagues here do, things like data engineering, architecture, cybersecurity, governance, will still require humans, right? And I think even if you take our IT industry, we are adaptive. We are flexible, we are persistent, we are adaptive. We will adopt. The new normal will be different, but I think obviously some, for example, I was talking to the founder of a unicorn, HR tech unicorn. He said their testing team is now down to one. One. Okay. So obviously now a lot of it is being done, through platforms and tools, but the rest of the team has been redeployed, right? And so I think it is both a threat, but it's also an opportunity.
So stay active and then move along. That's important. Perfect. Rohit.
Yeah, I just want to add there is not much of a thing to worry out here because each one of you, when you play the role, I think because of our experience, our expertise, we have a lot of skills. So when you hire for somebody, it's kind of a box what you're hiring, right? You open the box, you have so many chocolates, different sizes, different these things. So what I suggest is some of them skills may become not relevant, some of them might be taken over by AI. But if you look at like a manager, like as Sanjay was saying, when a manager, when you're hiring, you have communication skills, personalization skills, technical skills, delegation skills, so many things, and process skills. Process may not be relevant at some point of time. Your oversight may not be relevant, but your communication, your ability to influence people, your ability to grow still relevant. So find out what you are good at, find out what you are looking at, and you grow on top of this. Of course, that is something which is going to help us.
Communication is not getting outdated, so good point. Thanks for that, Rohit. Sharanya?
From my perspective, building on what these two stalwarts said, see, when internet came in, right, it took away the manual typing jobs, but it did create cybersecurity, so many new types of jobs, right?
Yeah.
Similar to that is what we are going to see, is my opinion. Definitely, yes, in the interim short period, it is going to be unstable where there's a lot of transition happening, but you already see new roles popping up, right? Like AI ethicist, you have something like that. You have agent orchestrator, you have jobs that you haven't heard of coming up before. So that's the transition that's going to happen. So instead of resisting the change, resisting the technology, it's more important to adopt it early on and being relevant, staying relevant in the current industry. That's what is going to help.
Okay. Good take. Thank you. We will conclude
Sure.
with you, Sanjay.
To MSR's point, right, in our organization, we have 0 testers, no, right? And that's the norm these days. We do not have UI developers or testers. Having said that, it allows us to build solutions. I'll give you one example and time's up. Recently, my cousin had a stroke, and I was in the hospital with the neurosurgeon. And out there, they were doing some testing that was going on, real-time testing, all time series data. We have a solution which does time series probing. And I could see the applicability of our solution out there. So I think time has come for us to build solutions that will really change the world. I truly believe in that.
Perfect. So be open to learn and unlearn and stay relevant in the era of machines, what you're saying. Perfect. Great. So with that, that's our time. Thank you very much for being the lovely audience, and especially want to thank each one of you, to be part of this panel discussion. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.